thanks so much for coming on the program. It's an important day. We're in the middle of a pandemic, celebrating a victory 75 years ago. I personally feel a different appreciation for this. Just tell us, how significant was 1945?
1945 was obviously one of the most important years in the history of the last century, and I think one can say in the history of humanity. Especially on this day, which stands for, as we know, the victory in Europe in the Second World War over Nazism and fascism. We cannot underestimate how important it was in global history that this particular trajectory of politics was cut short and was thoroughly defeated at that time. Of course, the war was not entirely over. It would be over only by September, strictly speaking, because the war was still continuing in Asia. But I think the key thing about this date remains the defeat of a very radical, very dangerous right. That might actually tell us something about our own times as well.
And talking about our times right now, the coronavirus is very tough on so many people. But how does this compare to what people endured during 6 years of war?
Yes. Now, the comparison is difficult, of course, because a pandemic and a war are different things, although sometimes wars come with pandemics. But in sheer figures, in statistics, we think about now that World War II had a total of 60 to perhaps 65, 66 million victims, all in all, globally speaking. Those are only those who lost their lives. Of course, many other people suffered in different ways. This cannot yet be compared to the suffering that we are also taking globally as humanity, as it were, from this particular pandemic. I think, when you make that comparison, what strikes me as interesting is that World War II was also a time in which governments had to function very well and had to actually live up to high standards to manage the mobilization of resources that was necessary to defeat something as dangerous as the Axis. And I wonder if our current governments, globally speaking, if you look at the United States, if you look at the UK, would actually have done as well as their predecessors.
We have about a minute left, Tarik. Very quickly, what do you think is changing people during this pandemic that could relate to the way people acted during World War II? For example, I heard a World War II veteran saying, people stop and speak to us on the street, and they didn't before. Just very quickly.
Yes, there's a chance for change for the better if we learn again to be in more solidarity with each other. But of course, we shouldn't overlook that there are also chances for change for the worse if we become egotistical and insular.
Indeed, indeed. Tarik, it's been a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for making time for us. Tarik Cyril Amar, prominent historian here in Istanbul.